When my dad texted me, "Go Cowboys," I broke down his front door with a baseball bat. My dad has been a die-hard Eagles fan since before I was born, and he's hated the Cowboys with his entire soul since they knocked Philadelphia out of the playoffs in 1995. In 30 years, I have never once heard him say anything positive about Dallas, and I know I never will. So when I was sitting in a conference room 3 hours from home, and my phone lit up with a text from him that just said, "Go Cowboys," my stomach dropped through the floor. I called him immediately, and the call got declined after 2 rings, which meant someone looked at the screen and pressed ignore. I called again, and it went straight to voicemail, which meant the phone was off. I walked out of the conference and called 911, and the dispatcher picked up and I said, "My father just sent me a text he would never send, and I think he's in danger." She asked what the text said, and I told her, and she went quiet for a second and then said, "Ma'am, is this an actual emergency?" I wanted to reach through the phone and strangle her. She said they'd send a welfare check when a unit became available, and I asked how long, and she said, "I can't give you a time frame." I grabbed my bag and ran to my car and started driving. I called my mom, who was staying with my aunt 3 states away, and she said she hadn't talked to Dad since that morning, but something had been off with him all week. She said he kept bringing up some jury duty case from a few years back where a young girl died, and the father had been showing up at the other jurors' houses. I was doing 90 on the highway when I called my sister, who lived 20 minutes from our parents' house, and told her something was wrong with Dad. She laughed and said, "Are you seriously having a breakdown over a text about football?" I told her Dad would rather die than say "Go Cowboys," and she said, "You're being dramatic. He probably lost a bet at work." I begged her to just drive over and check, and she said, "No, I'm not doing this with you," and hung up. I was still 2 hours away. I called my sister back screaming and told her if she didn't get in her car right now, I would never forgive her for the rest of my life, and she finally said fine. 20 minutes later, she called back and said, "I knocked and nobody answered. His truck is in the driveway, but everything looks normal. You have officially lost your mind." I asked if she tried the back door or looked in the windows, and she said no to both. I begged her to do something more than just knock, and she said, "I'm not breaking into Dad's house because you're having a paranoid episode," and hung up. I screamed at my windshield and punched my steering wheel until my hand throbbed. I was still over an hour out. A cop pulled me over for doing 35 over the limit. I watched him in my rearview mirror as he sat in his cruiser running my plates, and I could feel every single second bleeding away while my leg bounced against the floor and my hand squeezed the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. He finally walked up to my window and asked if I knew how fast I was going, and I said yes, and he asked where I was headed in such a hurry, and I wanted to explain, but I knew how insane it would sound, so I just said, "Family emergency." He went back to his cruiser and sat there for another 5 minutes while I watched the clock on my dashboard change and thought about my dad wondering if anyone was coming for him. I wanted to get out of my car and bang on the cop's window and beg him to let me go, but I knew that would only make things worse. When the cop finally handed me the ticket, I floored it and watched the miles tick down on my GPS like a countdown. I pulled into my parents' driveway 3 hours after I got that text. The house looked normal from the outside with the porch light on and Dad's truck in the driveway.